This is the between part 5. Let's do some recapping. You currently have 3 active threats, which is the maximum amount of active threats. One of those active threats, the Limehouse Lurker, is very close to being resolved. You have answered all the questions. You have determined that this small vampire, which is in fact a child, was the child of one of Julius's associates, a woman that he and his friends fed off of. And she's dead, and Julius sort of adopted the boy by changing him into a vampire, but then got disinterested and sent him on his way. And so the lurker is basically an abandoned child, and essentially an orphan. You have the ability now to recreate a scene from the lurker's home life in order to lure the lurker to you, and then you can decide what to do with the lurker after that. But in any case, it has to be done during a night phase. The other active threat is the Nutcracker. Our serial killer, the Sculptor, is murdering young men from the Royal Ballet and posing their frozen bodies in various places in the city. You currently have 1 clue towards 3 possible questions, all of which are different ways of resolving the threat. And the Waitley camera is your 3rd active threat. It just has 1 question. What circumstances will cause someone photographed by the camera to disappear? Answering that question unlocks 2 opportunities. The first is you can resolve the threat by reversing that process and bringing back this actress, Penelope Levy, who was disappearance is the reason why you know about this at all. Or you can use the Waitley camera to transport yourself to the Fragrant Void and make contact with the entity there. This will give Hargrave House the move Void Walker. You currently have 2 clues towards that question. The hunters each have 2 conditions. I'm not going to go through them, but just that's sort of where they're at in terms of condition load. A couple of them are pretty dangerous, though, I will say. Marked by the Waitley camera is 1, marked by the Sculptor is another. The Sons of Another World is not immediately dangerous, but it's intriguing for sure. In any case, that's where we kind of find the characters. Theodora, we're actually not too far along in the mastermind threat. Only 2 clues so far on that. And as far as the other things going on, the most significant thing that happened last time, I think, is that Julius had a party at Hargrave House while he came hoping to party with Ms. Sand and Mr. Goodfellow, found a burn right instead, and just sort of went ahead with his party, which involved murdering a bunch of people and then crafting a artwork that mimics Mr. Goodfellow's masterwork statue, but instead of being made of plant material, it is made of bone and viscera. So that is currently in Miss Sand's ritual chamber, just to put a little extra spin on that. And that's sort of where things are. I think in the following day phase, Julius is already cleared out, but you are all stuck with his leavings, as it were. The place is a fucking mess. There's blood everywhere. And we have this artwork, this little gift left down in the basement. So that's sort of where things are. Does anyone have any questions or anything to add to the recap? I will note also, worth noting for the Sculptor, is that one of the side characters, a young dancer, Sasha Delov, was murdered by Julius and Ms. Sand. So that's another little extra tidbit there as well. Mm-hmm. And also another thing worth noting about the Waitley camera is that you have so much access to the Society Obscura because Mr. Goodfellow has made one of the heads of the society their worshiper. So that's another thing to be aware of. Anything else, though?
One thing that stood out to me was that Julius mentioned that he used to be a Hargrave House hunter.
He did, yes. This is a very good detail. Yep. Also, did Burnright? I'm trying to remember, how did Julius get access to the house? Was he just there already?
Julius was there already.
Right.
However, the guests were let in by Burnright, and Burnright moved the party from Robin's room to the basement. And
Right.
it's implied that Burnright was involved during the whole thing.
Yeah, we didn't see it on screen, but it was a very strong implication, especially when you put on the mask of the tiger. So that's great. And
Miss San did find the statue.
Oh yeah. I
I'm-
definitely took that as Burnright replying in kind to the many insults.
Intriguing. Well, you can interpret however you wish. I don't know. I mean, it's just there. We can kind of maybe have scenes about it. One thing I think is worth pointing out is that Julius apparently does like either the sort of vampire lore of vampires needing to be invited into a place does not apply, or doesn't exist, or doesn't apply to Julius in the case of Hargrave House, maybe because he was a former hunter. So that's just another little interesting wrinkle. So with all that said, there are no new threats to introduce this day phase because there are 3 active threats, so no need for any of that. And so we'll just go around the table and find out what everyone's interested in doing. As a reminder, you can try to clear your conditions with vulnerable moves. You can maybe focus on a dawn question, or you can continue any of the investigations. Make plans for rounding up the lurker, perhaps. These are all things you could do. So let's start with Ms. Sant. What do you want to do today? Oh, you're muted. Thanks.
I'm feeling pretty saturated on blood and guts and the Waitley camera thing. So I think I am going to go back and sniff around the ballet. And I think there was a training facility or something. There was a place that we knew about that wasn't the theater.
Yeah, let's review it a little bit. So we know that there is a dance studio. Ms. Gagnon invited Mr. Goodfellow, in fact, to come stop by. And we also know that you have a contact in Rabbi Rebecca Solomon as well, who's a former Hargrave House hunter. Her synagogue is nearby. And also we have one of the bodies was found near St. Paul's Covent Garden. One of the bodies was found near Rabbi Solomon's synagogue. And the other body was at the park near Regent's Lake Park. So it's all kind of in the same area, very localized. But the ballet studio sounds great. Absolutely. What about you, Mr. Goodfellow?
Well, I think, Robin's very flattered by the gift Julius left. But at the same time, thinks maybe it was a little rude to, enter my room without permission. So I think might be worth a little prank. And,
to play on Julius?
Yes.
Indeed, because you do know where Julius generally hangs out in Limehouse, right? So.
Yeah. Basically return the favor and see if Burnright wants to join in and remove a condition.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds good.
Please do not take the sculpture.
Oh,
Do not take the sculpture?
Oh, Burnright is going to take the sculpture and move it elsewhere.
Okay, I would like to at least keep some of the viscera. It is in my ritual chamber.
Why don't we have a scene about the sculpture then? I think maybe that's what we should do at the start. With the 3 of you debating what to do about the sculpture. Let's have that role play.
So we left off last night with me walking in and finding this sculpture. So I think when the rest of Hargrave House wakes up, I am in my ritual chamber building an aquarium around the sculpture.
I think I got left down the basement like last time, and so I'm kind of a little bit disheveled and like more than usual, and like
I will have not changed clothes since last night, so I'm also disheveled.
Robin is generally a little disheveled.
That's not new for Robin, though.
Miss Sand. And I'm just giving you this look of like, do you have something to say to me about like you like building this aquarium?
So at this point, I think I knock over a couple of the bell jars under which there are these virulently covered frogs. I was like, do you understand what a gift this is? I can finally replenish some supplies.
That is not yours.
I believe it was a gift from me.
It was left in my ritual chamber. So I can only interpret that it is a gift for me.
It was only put there because it would have made a mess otherwise elsewhere. Your floor is made of stone rather than wood, and blood seeps into wood.
Because I am quite used to dealing with blood and viscera here. And when I walk in and I see a pile of blood and viscera here,
you get a little bit excited, apparently.
This is my ritual chamber. This is a ritual.
I must say I have a bit of a sentimental connection with this piece. Miss Sand, it would do me ever such a favor if you were to leave it intact.
Oh, I was just planning to use it as the substrate.
A substrate?
Mm-hmm.
What is a substrate?
I believe that is sort of a fancy word for floor for fish.
These are frogs, not fish.
I must admit, I don't enjoy the idea of a bunch of frogs hopping around my thing.
I was just intending to let them lay eggs so that the eggs could get a taste of the dark potency here before the frogs emerge.
Does this need to be refrigerated, perchance?
Not if we keep it in the right fluids.
There's
also
chemicals.
It's pretty chilly down here.
There's also use of chemicals to preserve things. Oh.
Sorry, yes, there are chemicals. You're right, but
well, if anyone know about preserving bodies, Bernard, I'm sure you have some expertise in the matter.
Yes, I could offer a compromise and find a replacement for this.
Could you find a replacement from as many parts as this?
It will take me a little bit longer than Julius, but it is possible.
I'd like to see you try.
So would I.
I would as well. What is your thinking, Bernard?
I can't say because I don't have there's not a lot of like masks, but there's a reason like why Burnright worked for Dr. Carrion and why he knew about.
I see. This is backstory still. Okay, good. So but you are thinking you are going to get something for Ms. Sand that is of equal value, equal or greater value. Is that the idea?
Yes, I'm going to put it bluntly, I'm going to build my own statue.
Intriguing. I feel like this is all very, very interesting, and I love it, and it feels very important to all of the characters at this point. I would like for you all to take the condition Julius's gift, please. And so, why don't we pick up then with, Mr. Goodfellow and Burnright going to pay a visit to Julius, to play a prank on Julius. He sleeps during the day, of course, with his nest in Limehouse, but you know the way, you've both been there.
Mhm.
What does this look like, Mr. Goodfellow?
I asked Burnright if he can get me a body right now. Living dead is good, but living soon to be dead is better.
All right. Like, there's no shortage of people almost dying in London. I know the folks over at Miswell Hill, they're a poor lot. So I don't think that's going to be rather difficult, but rather, what type of person are you looking for? Is there any specifics? Because, like,
Well, I would hate to be demanding, of course, but someone regal with perhaps a nice Grecian nose, a very dignified, noble bearing, maybe a little over middle aged. If you can procure the actor, I shall procure the costume.
okay.
Very intriguing. What sort of person are you going to find then, Burnright?
Well, instead of going to Miswell Hill, I'm thinking I'm going to go to Jenny Johnston's Opium Den, because, like, that has a little bit more access to people who are not in their right mind, and can get a little bit closer to looking dignified, as it were.
And they're nearby as well, which is probably
Mhm.
helpful, right?
Yeah.
Good. We'll come back to this. Ms. Sand, you're heading to the dance studio. And let's see if we have a paint the scene here. We might, to check the. There we go. We do, the ballet studio. So I think as you sort of step in, you do see a number of dancers engaged in some very intense looking leg stretching, steely eyes, and the mirrors that are all around. You hear the soft pat of a body landing perfectly. These paint the scenes are so complex. Chopin's Etude, Opus 25, number 11, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, Winter Wind, plays down the hall. In what way does the studio echo the dramatics of the piano? Oh, it's not too bad. This is for everyone, of course.
I imagine on the sort of, since this is a separate space from the theater, that there's been some use of storage within the space, like props that have not been like used recently. So, like, you have more, since it's the winter season, you have more springtime props and scenery. And I imagine like, even with the ballets, that there is like some ballets revolving around war and dramatics. So, like, there is like sort of this mural of like this very violent scene in this space.
Very nice.
There are long stretches in this piece in which there are two voices. There's the low bass line played by the left hand, which sounds like the rumble of thunder, and a high selection of notes that are the whistling of the wind. And just like that, there are two groups of people on the dance floor. There are the dancers who are performing their beautiful arabesques, and there's the gossipy, bitter backup crowd that is staring at them resentfully.
I think you see a lone dancer, maybe on the younger side, just in like the lavatory, just crying as the music kind of echoes around them. You kind of get the pull-out shot of just like the emptiness around them.
Ms. Sand, out of character, has Ms. Sand met Theodora yet?
No, I've
No.
received a card from her.
You did indeed. You will notice a woman, another guest, or another sort of viewer, auditor, if you will, watching the practice. A very elegant, very beautiful older woman, with her hair done up, her dark curls done up very nicely, wearing a sapphire blue gown. And you will recognize the blue in the card. Perhaps just a coincidence, or just your mind playing, making connections that are not there. But in any case, she will look at you and give you a sort of like, almost like a glint of recognition, like she knows you and she's happy to see you. And Ms. Gagnon is there with her long switch, correcting people's form as she walks among the dancers. So what do you do, Miss San?
I think I am going to walk over to Theodora, who I do not know is Theodora, but sticks out as different from everybody else. Everybody else here is dressed for work, and she is dressed for something else. And I know sort of out of character, because out of character I know who Theodora is, but I imagine the stony gaze which with Theodora views the violence Miss Gagnon is dashing out gives me some sort of clue. So I think my opening line is going to be something along the lines of, I see you use blue the way I use red, acknowledging both of our very monochromatic wardrobes, which only leaves me to wonder what humors you might be concealing with your color choice.
She says, that's good.
And then I'll sit down next to her.
She just smiles. I'll cut back over to you. Mr. Goodfellow, are you doing anything while Burnright procures a prank victim?
Well, I think I'm able to get what I need out of my own wardrobe. I think it's funnier if we just cut to us meeting again.
Okay, very good. So, Burnright, you're at Jenny Johnston's opium den. Jenny Johnston, of course, recognized you from Hargrave House, and she will say, I hope you're here to tell me that we have found some resolution in the matter of the bodies in my basement.
Yes, we have determined who it's actually being done by, or at least got a description of them. However, it will be resolved within the next 24 hours, for certain.
She says, splendid, splendid. Well, I can't thank Hargrave House enough for helping us with this matter. And I'm very, very happy that we didn't have to get the newspapers or the police involved. Are you here to partake in the puppy?
Yes, just some concerning news as of like no need to for yourself. It's more of a personal matter than Hargrave House matter.
She says, oh, well, by all means, please get comfortable, and somebody will be around to attend to you shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you do?
I'm going to look for a booth in which someone is sort of sitting by themselves and like kind of like zoned out as like Jenny Johnson goes off to do something else.
Yeah, I think that's easy enough to find. Man or a woman?
A man.
And you will find a man. You will also, has Burnright met the man in the sun mask?
Yes, I have. That's why the Sons of Another World.
That's right. Yeah, good point. Let's lean on that a little bit. The man in the sun mask says, basically interrupting you from what you're trying to do, says,
Oh, Mr. Burnright, I thought I sensed your particular air of tidiness and businesslike demeanor. What brings you here today?
A bit of business from my employer. I don't think you will say anything. You don't strike me as that type of person.
I am not. But I wonder if I could tempt you, persuade you even, to share the pipe with me.
Perhaps later, because
I
I'm
want the
on
day
this.
move.
Ah, God.
I want the day move. What are you afraid is going to happen if you lose your willpower here?
Oh, I'm just gonna do opium for the next like couple hours.
Yeah, I think that's probably the problem. This is going to be with, I think it's with composure, maybe vitality. Let's say,
It's composure because
I
I'm
think it's
being,
composure. Yeah.
yeah, because it's a social thing rather than a physical thing.
Yeah. It is a disadvantage though because of sense of another world.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't have anything I can really use at this point. Okay, that's not bad, all things considering. That is a 7.
A 7. Good. So let me think about the complication here. I think the complication is he's going to extract a promise out of you.
Okay.
It says,
I, of course, won't delay you, Burnright. I know how important your service to your employer is, though I gather the employer in question tends to shift around a bit. I do hope you will be able to join me tonight, however. I have something very, very intriguing to show you.
Oh, that is very exciting.
and his expectation is that you will return tonight,
Okay.
unless you want to mark Janus mask. So
It's fine. It's fine. Burnright is like, oh no, I promised way too many things to way too many people.
yeah, I don't need a role to like get somebody to come with you. That we don't need to role play that necessarily, but so the next scene we'll see will be with Mr. Goodfellow and the intended opium addict. Let's go back over to Ms. Sand, however. So Ms. Sand, this woman, you will notice that she has like a sort of sheer blue sleeve, which from a distance easily covers, but at your range does not cover at all, a tattoo of an anchor, like a sailor tattoo. Seems a little out of place for a woman of her apparent wealth. And she says, yes, my humors. That's a very interesting way to put it. The only sort of substance I deal in, the invisible forces that I try to control, are money and influence. Perhaps not as dramatic or esoteric as perhaps what you are involved in, but powerful nonetheless.
I believe you. It's the color of intellect, you know, blue. But speaking of, has anything struck you as out of place about this particular sphere of influence? There is a force moving here that I've come to investigate.
Take an information move with presence, and yeah, just regular dice. It'll be fine. You're muted, Max.
Relieved to find that my presence is not negative. I rolled a 7 on the dot.
Very good. A 7, very good. Let's take a look at the clue list. She says, I have a feeling, given your color of choice, that you are very interested in blood. Do I have it right?
Yes.
And my mind, which I am told is very keen, leads me to believe that your inquiry involves this rather disturbing matter involving the Sculptor that has all the salons in London aflame with rumor and hysteria. And so, I know how to answer your question. I have seen some things. Ms. She's reaching for your name, though you somehow know she knows your name.
Miss Sans, although I think you left me a card once.
Did I? Yes, Ms. Sand. I better look at the current clues actually before I say. She says, I don't know how much you know about the history of the Royal Ballet, Ms. Sand, but 15 years ago, there were a string of suicides. Some of the dancers driven to it, perhaps because of the harsh treatment they've received at the hands of Ms. Gagnon. And here we see Ms. Gagnon berating a dancer. Or perhaps some other reason, who can say for sure. I'm surprised that the newspapers in Scotland Yard haven't made the connection yet. But of course, I make the connection. And now you do.
I would not have known that, as I am not a frequent patron of the ballet. So thank you for the tip.
Indeed, indeed. Happy to be of service. And we'll pause that scene there. So, who wants control of this scene? Sounds like it's your thing, Mr. Goodfellow. So do you want to like show us what's going on here?
Yeah, I think Burnright arrives at the entrance of the vampire lair to find Robin kind of standing outside with like a long white toga wrapped under his arm, and he's wearing his golden laurel crown. And he looks up and what does the performer look like, Burnright?
He looks like sort of a middle-class man, a bit bedraggled because not only he's under the effects of opium, but I sort of injected with him something from the remains of whatever Dr. Carrion had in her laboratory. I, as a player, don't know what it is, but I think Burnwick does.
Yeah, I think he sees you guys coming. He's like, "Oh, good, you're here. How wonderful."
Hopefully you don't need this one to be speaking.
Oh, no, this is perfect. And then I think I go in to like shake the guy's hand, and I grab his limp hand in mine, playfully shake it. I'm like, "Hi, Robin Goodfellow. Wonderful to make your acquaintance. Please come in, come in." And I think we go down into the lair.
The lair is, as I've described it before, in the day, the vampires are just sort of lounging about, sleeping. Julius is in his little throne, doing the same. His hand rests, or his, face resting in his hand, is leaning up against the arm of the chair. So then what, Mr. Goodfellow?
I think I take the man from Burnright, kind of stand him up, and put the toga over him. I kind of look him over. I'm like, almost perfect. Just one little thing. and I take the crown off my head and put it on his. And I tell him, all right, sir, your line is Etude Brute.
And the man, who seems very like, what promises did you make him, Burn, right, to get him to come?
I basically drugged him. So like he's barely conscious. Like to get him, like I imagine like I was leading him along like over my shoulder, that sort of thing, rather than I just effectively kidnapped this man. Like
So he's there, and he's just doing what he's told, right? Because he's under the effects of various substances, apparently. And so then what, Mr. Goodfellow?
I pulled out a jeweled knife from behind my pocket and stabbed him in the stomach.
Are you intending to do this when Julius is awake, or are you going to try to wake Julius so that he sees?
No, I want him to find the body.
Very good. And very good. Are you going to write Etude Brute in blood somewhere, like? Or
I'm going to write "Beware the Ides of March"
very good.
on the
Okay,
wall just opposite Julius's throne. And I think I grab Burnright and try to get out of there before, the smell of the blood rouses them.
Can we also talk about the dueling Shakespearean plays going on here in the, in the scene together? Very good. Vulnerable move is triggered, as this is a prank, and maybe you could tell me which conditions you're clearing, both of you.
I think I'm clearing Julius's gift because I'm kind of paying back the favor.
You're giving it back to him. Yeah, that's fair. You both can clear that.
yeah.
And would you like to stumble on a clue or invite Burnright to ask you a question about the past?
I mean, I think if I was Burnright, I would have questions about this, so I'm going to say question.
Think on it. You can ask the question as you're going back to Hargrave House or wherever you're going. Let's cut back over to Ms. Sand and the dance and Theodora. Theodora says, I'm very happy to have made your acquaintance, Ms. Sand. And she sort of like lets out a sigh. And here you will notice the glimmer of the sapphire on her throat. It glimmers. It's more dazzling and brighter than it should be, given just the natural light coming in through the windows. I am curious how it makes you feel.
Sorry, can you repeat? She's curious.
Oh, I'm curious, Ms. Sand, how does like seeing the sapphire at her throat that glimmers strangely in the light, in the low light, how does it make you feel?
I think there's a little bit of nostalgia and fear because in that moment she reminds me of someone else.
Very good. Oh, intriguing. I think she is excusing herself from the scene, leaving you there with Ms. Gagnon and the dancers. And she puts her cheek, or her hand on your cheek rather, and like ever so slightly, like kind of caresses. And she smiles and she says, I have a feeling we're going to get to know each other very well, Miss Sand. And then she leaves. I would like for you to replace a taste for it with the sapphire. And mark your Janus mask. let's take our break a little early because I need to go to the restroom, but let's take 5 and we'll come back. I have been informed that Ms. Sand has marked the moss-covered gate. And so we cut away immediately to a scene on a ship. The stateroom or captain's cabin of the ship. And we see an elderly captain talking to someone who we can't quite see. And he's saying, "Have no fear, no fear. I said that I wouldn't say anything about where we'd been or who my passengers were. And believe you me, I intend to stick to my word on that. Though it was certainly an unusual port of call, but I'm not here to judge." And we just hear whispering of a trio of voices, 3 whispering sounds that dip in and out of each other. And the captain says, "What's that? What'd you say?" And now we see who he's talking to. 3 figures, probably women by their dress, but not necessarily so. Wearing sort of wide headdresses that have these heavy black veils that drape over their bodies so that only their arms, also covered in black, stick out of them. And the hands sticking out with these large, heavy veils are making strange movements in the air as they mutter. And the captain starts to get a strange, terrified look on his face. And he clutches his throat and begins to cough. And he removes his hands from his mouth, and his tongue is quivering in them. And one of the figures says, "We wanted to be certain you wouldn't say a word." And then they turn and leave the ship and step out off the gangplank to London. The coven has arrived. Getting back to our scene with Mr. Goodfellow and Burnright. Mr. Goodfellow, you have to scar the reflection because of your wanton murder this afternoon. How is the statue changing?
I think you see, this like very rich, dark sap start to pour out from the bark and kind of pool around it, a la blood. I don't suppose I get taketh away on this.
Oh, you do indeed. Do you want to go ahead and roll it?
Alrighty. 9 + 2 is 11.
Very nice. On a 10 plus, you get to choose 2 from the list. What do you want?
All right. I will. My conditions are fun, so I don't want to lose them. So I'll just take next roll with advantage, and I'll say there are no long-term consequences for first-degree murder.
Indeed, indeed. That includes consequences from Julius. Julius will not respond in any way, right? So,
Okay.
not like in a way that will be problematic for you, at least. Good. And you get to, I think maybe the scene is just you all leaving, maybe trying to find a cab when you ask your question, Burnright.
Yeah, I imagine that we managed to go to like a main street and like there's still like snow and slush, and Robin Goodfellow, as usual, is barefoot. And like I imagine like he got a little bit of blood on him, and I'm just trying to cleaning up a bit, straighten like his shirt and just like make sure everything is perfect about him. Oh, Mr. Goodfellow, that was some good fun, wasn't it?
I'm glad you enjoyed yourself, Burnright.
Yes. Not too many people get excited about those sorts of things.
Well, most people are boring. They don't understand the importance of art.
Hmm. I do. I'm very curious, sir, but I have to know. What is Julius to you? Is he some sort of passing fancy, or is he something a little bit more? Or was he something like me currently, a long
Oh,
time ago?
Don't worry, Burnright. There is no one like you. And as for Julius, well, all fancies are passing because that is the nature of life. But I will say, I have a thing for artists. But of course, you must always play hard to get.
Mm. Do you like to share? Because, like, from what I've seen, Julius doesn't mind sharing.
Well, the way I see things is ownership is little more than an illusion. Freedom is all. To impose upon another's freedom, why, that's the greatest crime I can imagine, far more so than any pathetic little murder, right?
Hmm. I imagine has more to do with sort of a exchange of power. The one who releases their freedom to another, that is the greatest gift that you can give.
You know, I don't think I've ever thought of it before, that way before, Brent, right? You've given me something to ponder. But I must say, I can't imagine I would ever submit to someone else.
But I would gladly submit to you.
Would you, Burnright?
Yes.
Would you do so? Right here, right now?
Ooh, this worshiper.
Yes, and like I'm going to get on my knees.
I love it. Let's read the move just to be reminded how it goes. If another hunter debases themselves at your feet, they may take the following condition: worshiper. If they do so, they mark an XP and use Scar Reflection. As long as they have the condition, there's a new dawn question, which is always available. Did you continue to perfect your worship of the undeniable? You get to answer it for them, Mr. Goodfellow. If you say yes, you mark XP instead of them, and then give them something from personal quarters, which goes on their sheet unmarked.
Okay.
So, Burnright, continue. How do you debase yourself?
Like I imagine that I as I'm kneeling before Goodfellow and the snow, it's like sort of like it's slush and it's sort of soaking into my pants, and like I take Goodfellow's hand and I kiss it.
It feels like a good scene.
Definitely.
Miss Hunt, Miss Gagnon, they're having a break. And Miss Gagnon approaches you. A reminder about Miss Gagnon. She is... she's a very, very stern woman, we'll say. And she has a tight, polite, but utterly cheerless smile on her face as she approaches you. And she says, "Are you an associate or a friend of the legendary pirate queen?"
Well, I think we are newly acquainted, and perhaps one day we will be friends. Pirate Queen?
Yes, yes. The pirate queen of Barbuda, Ms. Theodora Brathwaite. She is a patron of the opera and ballet. And so she's allowed to sort of roam about as she pleases. She's quite generous in many ways, not just with her money. She was, of course, you're probably too young to know, but many years ago, she was the scourge of the Atlantic Ocean, and the Royal Navy went through quite some trouble to catch her. And they did. It was quite a sensational story back in the day. And of course, now she has turned her fleet to more lucrative and less technically criminal enterprise.
I love a story like that. Someone who was associated with such violence and carnality, moving on to genteel intellect in a city such as this one. But no, I did not come because of her. You see, an associate of mine, Robin Goodfellow, was invited to audition here, and I simply thought that I would check out the premises before I suggested to him that he might take you up on that offer.
Yes, yes, Mr. Goodfellow. A very, very striking young man. Quite an unusual and yet entirely alluring look about him.
Many find that is true, and I have no doubt that were you to put him on stage in whatever garb he chose, you would find donations pouring in from the most unlikely of places.
Well, of course, the trouble is that I took the measure of our young Mr. Goodfellow when I had the chance to meet him recently, and though there was a certain dexterity in his movements, a certain grace, my estimation was that he lacked the power and muscle necessary to perform in the ballet. Ballet is more than just floating about in the air, dancing about on one's toes. There is a lot of strength to it, as you can see from our young fellows here in the dance studio.
Yes, I imagine that the muscles they develop under your careful eye serve them later in life.
Yes, well, we do what we can. Sometimes we have to take lots of unconventional methods have to be engaged from time to time to get the right result. How can I help you otherwise, miss?
I was wondering, you know the gossip in all of the salons. You'd think that well, only the royal family could keep gilded young men for decoration. But I was wondering how your company is doing for numbers in absence of those few young faces.
She says, this is about the sculptor.
Yes.
Go ahead and roll the information move. Regular dice is fine.
And is this presence again?
It is present. Actually, you know what? You're marked by the sculptor. I think that might make her, she might pick up on that psychically or something, you know. Roll disadvantage.
Well, once more with disadvantage, I fail at a 4.
She says, I, of course, have had to field many, many questions about the sculptor. She says, I am afraid that I am not able to speak on the matter, miss. And then she will kind of look back a little nervously at the company. And then she'll look at you and she'll say, he watches us always. He's always near. I can feel his shadow lengthening over me even now. And something about your presence here, miss, enhances his power and gives me a terrible fright.
Well, in that case, I shall take my leave.
Now, before you go, perhaps you could join me at the ballet tonight in the basement.
Oh,
If you really want to know the story of the sculptor, I might be able to show you.
excellent. Well, I do love an invitation to join someone at the ballet.
Says,
I shall be there tonight.
we cut away immediately before you have this in this conversation to see the coven with their heavy black veils working their magic, casting a spell, chanting their words, sending their signal to you, Ms. Sand, that they are in London. Ms. Gagnon takes your hand and says, good, I have so much to show you, and I think that perhaps only you will be able to properly understand. And then when you release her hand, she lifts up a desiccated, withered stump crumbling to dust. And she gets a look of horror in her face. And you can see the flesh tightening and thinning. You can see the bone beginning to show beneath the skin, hair falling out in clumps. You have seen such magic before. This is not the work of the sculptor. There's a bit of commotion. The dancers can't tell what's happening, but she runs. And you know she's not going to get very far. Unless you mark the Janus mask, of course. Or leave it be. Ms. Gagnon's dead.
I think I will mark the Janus mask, the mask of the past this time.
Then she'll open up to you, and the complication will simply be that she has invited you to come to the ballet tonight. You don't have to. She's not not necessarily gonna hold you to it, but the invitation is there. Let's cut back over to Goodfellow and Burn Right. We'll give you each one more scene before we wrap up the day phase. Anything you'd like to do?
Mr. Goodfellow, is there anything you want to particularly do, or?
Well, I do owe that ballet lady a visit. Do you care for dancing, Bernright?
Oh, I love to dance.
Are you going to go see Miss Gagnon?
I think so.
I think it might be fun to run into Miss Sant. Let's just have that scene with the three of you at Covent Garden. Or Bernright, unless you're doing something else, Bernright.
I think I will be in the process of leaving as you are in the process of entering.
My dear Miss Sand, have you come to see my great debut?
I was just talking to Miss Gagnon about the details of that debut. She suggested that perhaps she would hold off until you developed some more muscle tone.
Excuse me?
It seems that she did not find your perfect physique as perfect as others found it. We know that she's an extremely demanding mistress.
I think you see a flash of rage on Robin's face for just a second, where he just kind of takes a breath like, I see. Well, we'll just have to prove her the error of her ways then, I suppose. Bernright?
Well, I was going to go talk to our would-be friend Rebecca Solomon about some suicides that have happened, perhaps because of Miss Gagnon's ministrations.
Well, great art is not created without suffering, am I correct?
Oh, I know lots of people who suffer at your feet are artists. So I'm sure. And if you choose to visit Miss Gagnon, I hope that the exchange of suffering is equal.
Well, the muse giveth and the muse taketh.
Oh, I'm sure.
Speaking of giveth, I do owe you a clue, Miss Sand, from your information move. And that clue is this. While you were chatting, or as you were getting ready to leave, you overheard some of the dancers asking Ms. Gagnon if there was going to be a rehearsal tonight. And Ms. Gagnon said yes at 3:30, as in 3:30 in the morning. That's your clue. That's a very unusual time to be doing anything. And I shall note it for you. But you're heading over to Rabbi Solomon apart from that, so that sounds good. Bernright, did you go with Mr. Goodfellow?
Yes, I went with Mr. Goodfellow.
I think when you step into the dance studio, Mr. Goodfellow, unless you're taking some other approach, but assuming you're just going right in, you will catch them just getting ready to go back from their break, and Ms. Gagnon says, "Oh, I was just speaking with one of your associates, Mr. Goodfellow."
Yes, that Helena Sand, such an unpleasant person. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that.
She says, "Oh, I found her rather intriguing. But, well, I'm very happy you stopped by." And then she turns and says, "Dancers, this is Mr. Goodfellow. With the proper training, I have no doubt that he would be superior to each and every one of you in every possible way. You all lack the natural presence and grace of Mr. Goodfellow, and the only thing you have over him at the time being is just a little bit of education and skill and conditioning. And she turns and says, Mr. Goodfellow, would you like to introduce yourself to the group, or otherwise give them a display?
I think I shall introduce myself in the most proper format, with dance. And I think I hand my coat to Burnright and just get up on the stage and start performing.
Oh, I want the day move here. What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail?
I look like an ass.
Yeah. Very good. Very, very nice. Okay. I think you should roll with vitality.
Mhm.
And I think you should roll at disadvantage because you're marked by Madame Gagnon, and I think she might, just her presence may interfere in some way.
I have automatic advantage off taketh, so those cancel each other out, right?
Ah, very good. Indeed you do.
Mhm.
So go ahead.
All
And roll.
right. Say a prayer. Okay, so that's 5 plus 2 is 7.
Very nice. Describe the dance.
It's definitely not ballet. I think it's like probably sort of like free wheeling sort of thing we saw on the flashback, like at the statue, kind of like very dippy new agey. So I think it probably like looks really good, but it's not ballet, and that's what these people care about.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the way you're describing it, it probably sounds more almost like a interpretive dance, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
which would be very, very unusual in this time period, right? This sort of thing was not really a thing. And I think by the time it's all done, everyone is just like in a sort of stunned silence. And let me find a side character that might be interesting here. There's someone else, Burnright. You saw her come in as Mr. Goodfellow was performing the dance. It's a woman. She is a street woman. She's missing some teeth, and she looks quite bedraggled, but she's wearing a Christmas wreath on her head like a crown, and she's holding a little wooden nutcracker statue. And she was watching from the window, but now she steps into the studio and breaks the silence by saying, I recognize your dance. I know it well. I have seen dances such as this. And Ms. Gagnon sees this woman and gets very angry and is trying to usher her out. And as this street woman with the Christmas wreath on her head is being pushed out, she cries out, she says, not all puppets have strings. You all are being toyed with even now. And Ms. Gagnon gets rid of her. And Bernard, what are you doing in the meantime?
I am. I'm going to, I guess, follow like this weird old lady out because she looks interesting.
Indeed. Mr. Goodfellow, please take the condition marked by the Snow Queen. And Burnright's following the Snow Queen. We'll come back to that. Miss Sant. Rabbi Solomon's synagogue. So first of all, you know Rabbi Solomon. She's a former resident of Hargrave House. You know each other well, so there's no need for any strange maneuvering or anything as far as that goes. The synagogue itself, in the center of it, there's a platform with a, where there's a big Torah scroll. There's a lamp holding a flame that never dies. Wax dribbling down a grand menorah indicates that it is the 6th night of Hanukkah, actually. Rabbi Solomon, when she was a resident of Hargrave House, the way she did battle with the terrors of London is she has a ring of power. And this ring of power allows her to trap and manipulate spirits and demons. But as I paint the scene for everyone, as we are in the synagogue, what demons are fought here? And what shows these struggles?
I think as she walks in, Rebecca is counseling someone, sort of an older working class gentleman. And from the context of the conversation, he seems to be an alcoholic, and she's trying to empower him to, stay clean.
Nice. Any other demons, literal or figurative?
Sasha took mine, so give me a moment.
That's okay. It's okay if you don't have anything either. It's fine.
I think there's a collection of young-ish women of lower middle class outside carrying signs with anti-Semitic slogans on them.
I imagine in the sort of low to the ground, like you would see like in the walls every so often, there's these little mouse holes, but there's no like traditional like mouse trap or what have you, but rather there is a little bit of a symbol drawn into the floor as though something other than mice is living within the walls.
Intriguing. Rabbi Solomon, she's been hunting demons even for a long time, even before she was at Hargrave House. And I think when you enter the synagogue, Ms. Sand, you see her reflexively fidgeting with the ring on her hand, the ring that she uses to contend with dark forces. I think her alliance with you has always been one of convenience. I think she probably greatly disapproves of your methodology. But nevertheless, she says, "Oh, Miss Sand, well, the place didn't collapse, so I suppose you must be in better spirits than usual."
I'd hesitate to say that, but better spirits than the last time I saw you, I imagine, is quite true. That said, I do have some questions. I just had a fascinating conversation with a pirate queen in the ballet. And I was wondering, because you have a history with the ballet yourself, and she suggested that I should look into these past suicides. I was wondering what your feelings about them are.
Well, first of all, I'm happy that Hargrave House has taken an interest in the Sculptor. I have done my best to keep an eye on things ever since these incidents started taking place. But yes, I have been a patron of the ballet for many years, and I do remember those troubling times. Though in truth, I didn't really think that, I thought that perhaps enough time had passed that maybe there was no connection, that the sculptor was just a monster that rose up from the void, like all monsters tend to do. And yet, you are right. The ballet is a place of demons, demons of the spirit. And then she sort of like sighs a bit. Miss Brathwaite, there's an interesting character. I am, I have to tell you, you might be surprised to hear that I actually acquired my taste for ballet and opera because of her.
Ooh,
Yes,
I knew she was cultured, but well, go on.
well, she and I, before I before I became a rabbi, even before I did my work at Hargrave House, she and I had a social relationship. Let's just leave it at that.
Cool.
But as to your question, the suicides, in fairness, I hadn't really considered it. It's an interesting angle. But while you're here, I have managed to find something that may be of use to you.
Oh,
I have heard the dancers. The dancers have been speaking of, and I quote, a final performance on Christmas Eve. When I pressed them on the matter, they buttoned up and wouldn't say anymore. But I think that this final performance on Christmas Eve has some connection to the sculptor. It's a free clue.
thank you. I will say I'm alarmed at the words "a final performance" from a group of young people we know is prone to suicide.
Yes, it certainly has a more sinister ring to it now, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
She says, now, Miss Sand, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I can practically hear the rafters shuddering at your presence here. Perhaps you and your friends who like to linger at the threshold would see your way out.
Before we leave, I just would like you and your ring to be aware that things are changing in London. And there are darker forces than I at play, and I might yet go darker. And so there's a possibility that you should need to intervene and be prepared to do so. But with that, I will take my leave. I am sorry for any distress I brought your temple.
As you're
Okay.
leaving, before you leave, before you walk out completely out of the front doors, she calls to you, Miss Sand,
Yeah.
I very much admire your commitment to keeping the streets of London safe. But you should know that I will not hesitate to put you down.
I could ask for no more. I hope I should not fight too much.
And she nods and lets you go. Burnright, you're following the Snow Queen. You can catch up to her easily enough. She sees you and she says, something about my story intrigues you.
I'm not sure whether or not I'm more intrigued by the story or more intrigued by you yourself.
And she's sort of like dancing with an invisible partner in the snow as she speaks to you.
Are you also a marionette?
And she holds up the nutcracker and talks with its mouth, moving it up and down. She says, I am a teller of tales, sir, a teller of tales. I see much and I know much. Clack, clack, clack. And I know that your God is a mischievous one. Clack, clack, clack. But be careful that mischief does not turn to malevolence. Clack, clack, clack.
I suppose that depends on who's malicious. I don't think my God is malicious. But I would say I myself am malicious.
She says, I have more stories to tell, many more stories to tell, but not today.
Oh,
There's plenty of time. The holiday season has time yet for me to tell my tales of winter woe, of merriment, of good cheer, of heartbreak.
and I'm going to get closer to her. Are you sure about that?
She leans close to you and she says, I have seen much of this world. I have been there at the beginning of tales that you know well. I will tell them to you. And she says, the sun is very bright today, don't you think? It has a certain radiance, as if it was from another world entirely. And then she dances off. And let's conclude the day phase of the scene with Mr. Goodfellow. Mr. Goodfellow, everyone is at the dance studio is very taken by your performance and quite enwrapped. Ms. Gagnon is more interested in watching the other dancers and their reaction to you. One of the young dancers, a young man who introduces himself as Eric, says, could you show me how to dance like that?
I can't show you anything. You simply need to feel it.
And he puts his hands on you, on your shoulders, on your arms, and he says, feel it, yes. Like this?
I take a step backwards so his hands fall off me, and I said, good, now show me.
Oh, intriguing. We just have a cut there, I think. That'll wrap the day phase. Let's go to the dawn, or the dusk rather. Dawn. Right, dusk phase. We have some factotum things to do. Ghost of Hargrave House if you wish, and day work if you wish.
All right, I have something to ask about a threat for day work. For the Nutcracker threats, Is Miss Gagnon directly working with the sculptor, or is she being blackmailed into working with the sculptor?
Very interesting. It's a good question. And I will tell you that you noticed something about Miss Gagnon that no one else noticed. That she had, her legs were wrapped in bandages, and you managed to peek through the bandages when you got a glimpse of them and saw that her legs are frostbitten. This would indicate that, due to the fact that we know the sculptor works with ice, this would indicate that she, at the very least, has made contact with the sculptor and is in his lair and has lived to tell the tale. It's also a clue.
Mm-hmm.
Frostbitten legs wrapped in bandages. But to answer your question, she's certainly in contact with him and has been to wherever he does his work.
Okay.
And let's proceed apace with paint the scene questions about Hargrave House. Let's do the ballroom. Hargrave House once hosted a ball for a group of visitors from the Fey realm. Even today, there are subtle reminders of that night in this room. What are they?
I think sometimes when you're in the room and walk out, you appear someplace completely different. You know, maybe instead of being the hallway house of Hargrave House, you're in the lavatory or somewhere else entirely in London.
I think the little tiny snowman, maybe 6 inches tall, sits in one corner in a little tiny snowdrift that is ever present, but seems to have evaded Burnright's broom so far.
The room itself is not cold, so that makes the snowman even more odd. It's fairly warm and moist, and from the ceiling, that at first it looks like it's been painting on, but no, there is actual plants growing downwards.
And I see from the chat that Burnright has returned Ms. San's door unmarked to personal quarters. That's great. All right, what's everyone doing during the night phase? I'll remind you that you do have the ability to clear the lurker threat by creating a scene reminiscent of its home life and drawing it in. And then dispatching it however you wish, either safely or violently. And Burnright is expected to have a meeting with the Man in the Sun Mask. Ms. Sand has been asked to join Ms. Gagnon at the ballet at the actual theater. Mr. Goodfellow, your dance card's clear tonight, it seems like. Let's see what everyone's doing. We'll start with Mr. Goodfellow, in fact.
I think it depends on if the others want to do their things or go clear the threat. I think if we aren't doing that, then he's gonna wander around looking for Julius.
You can certainly clear the threat on your own. I mean, not every hunter has to be involved, but. What do you think, Burnright? What do you want to do today? First night.
Well, technically, as per the rules, I cannot request vulnerable scenes from other people besides my employer. So, Mr. Goodfellow, would you like to come to me to the opium den? I'll bring cigars if you don't want to smoke opium.
Oh no, no. I love opium.
Ms. Sand, what are you doing tonight?
I think I was going to walk to the ballet.
Good. I like it. Very good. Okay, so sounds like Burnright and Mr. Goodfellow are going to Limehouse, and Ms. Sand is walking the streets of London at night. Very good. Janice Mass prompts. Do we have any unresolved ones that anybody wants to do now?
First sexual encounter with the dark entity.
Indeed. Please describe it.
So, after Helena's assault on her mother with the knife at behest of Mr. Black, Helena was sent to boarding school, where she led the life of a neglected child at boarding school. And she made friends with one of the boys who would work in the kitchen and run to town for groceries. And they would often sneak around back and smoke together. And I think one night she was finally willing to take things a little farther with him. And I think at the moment that Helena lost her virginity, Mr. Black possessed her. And by the time Helena came back to herself, she was kneeling naked in a pile of ashes that had once been this boy.
Thank you. Any other Janice Mask? Okay, then. The Unseen. Let's go take a look at London at Night. The Unseen. Tonight we are going to do A Night at the Grand Guignol, the Baker's Son. That's the very first entry. Every class of people in London is represented in the audience at the Theatre Grand Guignol. They have come to watch the newest production, The Baker's Son, a story filled with romance, heartbreak, and bucketfuls of blood. Everyone does the unseen. Act 1 will be Mags. Act 2 will be chaotic. Act 3 will be Sasha. Let's take 5. We are back. And out of the Grand Guignol, everyone, as the limelights pop to life and the crimson curtain is raised, what do we see as our eyes scan the stage that tells us this is the story of a humble baker's son?
The stage itself is rather empty in terms of like major props, but there is like the main feature is this just ridiculously sized oven.
Fantastic.
The actor playing our protagonist starts by aggressively tapping flour or brushing flour from his hands and outfit so that there's the appearance of snow over the stage.
Very nice.
I think someone on the crew was sent to get a bunch of fresh bread so the whole theater would smell, like that bakery smell.
That's good. Everyone is making their preparations to leave for the evening. Miss Sand does leave. Burnright and Mr. Goodfellow are still at Hargrave House. When we hear ding, 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 ding at the door.
More carolers. Get it, would you, Burnright?
Of course. And I will go to answer the door.
Indeed. It's a delivery boy. He has a box. He says, pardon, I would have brought this around back, but I knocked on the door out back and no one answered. But here's a package for you. Where shall I leave it?
Just hand it over and I'll take the package. Who's it addressed to, or if it's addressed?
To Mr. Goodfellow.
Okay.
I open it up.
Yeah.
The Whately camera is inside. And as soon as you open the box, you hear, Burnright, a noise coming from the basement.
I swear to God, if Julian is down there, well, Julius is down there, Mr. Goodfellow, there seems to be someone down in the basement, or we have extremely large rats.
Yes, that's very interesting. Why don't you take care of that, Burnright? I want to examine this a bit.
Miss Sand, it sounds like you are trying to trigger your move, a beacon in the dark, which says when you walk the streets of London at night, your consciousness spreading across the city like a vast spider web. Roll with sensitivity. Give us that first, though. What's it like as you walk across the streets, as you walk the streets?
I think it's a cold night. And I think as I leave Hargrave House, my breath is puffing into clouds of steam. But as I reach out to London with my consciousness, those breaths slowly fade, each one less and less steam, until there is no indication that I am breathing at all, whether it's because I have brought my breath down to be as cold as they are around me, or because I have stopped breathing. It's hard to tell. And I am walking in the direction of the ballet, and I have plucked an icicle from a passing doorway, or a doorway that I passed. And I'm just scraping it along the bricks of London's city streets as I pass.
I love that. Roll sensitivity. It's great.
That would be a 15.
Very good. On a hit, you are immediately confronted by a threat or a personified danger related to the threat. You get to ask 2 questions from the list below, and they will answer in the form of a clue. And on a 10 plus, they depart as soon as the questions are answered. We shall get to that in a moment. But I will tell you that you know it's working because you see those large clenched white teeth in the darkness down the way. Going back to the Theatre Grand Guignol. Mags, please describe Act 1, in which the baker's son, a young man named Daniel, falls in love with a woman, Dahlia, who he cannot have.
Act 1 is like a comedy. We see Daniel manning the bakery, and every patron makes a ridiculous demand of him. And he messes it up in some way, and they end up storming out. But a recurrent patron is Dahlia, the mayor's daughter. And every time he messes up her order, she slaps him And then there's this kind of comedy of him rubbing his cheek, but looking at her with adoration and saying, as you like. And finally, she becomes the only patron whose order he never messes up by the end of Act 1.
Very nice. Mr. Goodfellow, as you hold the Waitley camera in your hands, how can you tell it loves you and wants you for itself?
I think as I'm holding it, the room just fills with this smell. I think when we talked about the ritual last day, it was like it emitted sage. So it's
Cinnamon, actually, the warm spices.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's warm cinnamon mixed with that musk I myself exuding. It's a very nostalgic thing for Robin. And he holds it, the aperture pointing at his face, and he's just like smiling at it.
Burnright, as you go down to the basement, you are hit with that smell, that strong, powerful smell of nutmeg and cinnamon and other warm spices. It's a holiday-like smell, but not normally the kind of smell that comes from the basement, and certainly not normally the kind of smell that comes from Ms. San's ritual room, which is where it appears to be concentrated. What do you do? Oh, I think Caddock stepped away. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Did you hear all that, Caddock?
No, I
Okay, I'll say
turned
it
on
again.
the.
That's okay. So we were talking, so Mr. Goodfellow was describing how the Waitley camera loves Mr. Goodfellow and is jealously wants Mr. Goodfellow. And then I asked you, as you go downstairs to the basement, how do you, or as you go down to the basement, you smell these strong, warm spice smells, cinnamon, nutmeg, clove, and the smell is particularly concentrated from the ritual chamber, from which you hear the noises coming as well. What do you do?
Oh. Is someone baking bread? It's like the holiday season, and I'm just imagining like the smell of almost fruitcake. And
From the other side of the ritual chamber door, you hear and the scraping of bone on stone.
I'm going to crack open the door just a little bit, and I'm prepared to just immediately slam it back closed.
You crack open the door to see that Julius's gift, the statue, is moving in the ritual room.
Bam, closed it. I think like since like we're near the servants' quarters and like what have you, there's like a spare chair up against it.
We'll come back to that. Ms. Sand, the sculptor is there with you. Steps out of the shadows a little bit. You see his long black duster coat. His face is still quite occluded, and you just see those terrible, horrible clenched teeth, which he speaks through. And he says, "Why have you called me here, witch?"
Well, I was wondering what you wanted from the ballet.
And he has to answer in the form of a clue, so give me a moment. He says, "What I want from them is their warmth. I want
the heat of their bodies. I want to extract it. I want to pour it from them like a vessel. I want to hold it in my hands and be comforted by it. And as he speaks these words, you are standing near perhaps someone burning something, perhaps chestnuts being roasted on a fire, but there is no warmth coming from the fire. There's no warmth coming from the gas lamps. It is just bitterly, bitterly cold. And the answer is a clue. The sculptor wants their warmth. What do you do or say?
I know what my next question is, so I think I'm gonna skip an immediate response, but I am going to say, how can I get you then to choose Robin Goodfellow as your next victim?
Very good, very good. I'll answer that when we come back. Let's go back to the Grand Guignol. Chaotic, please describe Act 2, in which our protagonist, Daniel, impotently fights back against the forces that prevent him from being with Dahlia.
I imagine like the Act 2 opens up with what effectively is the baker's son running from a mob. It's not so clear whether it's a mob of angry ex-lovers of his beloved Dahlia, or is it her family? The other case, like he runs through like a sort of a doorway and then slams the door shut and tries to like block it off with all his force, but like there's too many people and the door just sort of like I think this is sort of a mistake because the door is not attached to anything, and so like the door gets literally thrown to the side.
Very nice. Mr. Goodfellow, you have been standing in the hallway looking at the Waitley camera, and you feel someone now touching your lower leg and calves.
I look down.
It is Portia Abernathy. She says, I was going to wait until tomorrow, but I couldn't contain myself, my lord. Do you love my gift? I give it to you freely.
It is exquisite.
And then she's sort of like, she lays a kiss on your knees. Wonderful. I think it is, if such a thing is possible, it is worthy of you. I know that it wants nothing more than to be with you. And she says, she kind of looks around at Hargrave House, sort of Gothic grandeur. And she says, I feel as if I am in a temple of the gods.
Or perhaps a grave. Tell me, do you have the pictures from the other night?
Yes, I do. And she fumbles around inside the folds of her dress to retrieve them. She gives them to you. What do we see?
I think, you see Robin sort of posing in his grandeur, but there's a shape hovering over him, like a spirit photo sort of thing. And it's large and hulking and has maybe not antler horns, but there are definitely protrusions that look like horns. And I think Robin's kind of smile falters a little bit, and he kind of looks at it hard, and there's something he doesn't like. And he kind of snaps at Portia. This isn't right. We need to take another.
And she says, yes, of course. I'm so sorry, my lord. I'm sorry that the pictures displease you.
It's fine. We will rectify this.
And we cut down to Burn Right. Burn Right, I would like the night move to keep this monstrosity inside the ritual room. What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail?
Well, it gets out, and I'm not afraid of it killing me. I'm more or less afraid of it trying to climb inside me.
Oh, intriguing. And it's worse than that. It climbs inside you and uses you as a weapon against
the
Sand. And so if you're okay with this, you can roll with, I think it's probably supposed to be sensitivity because of a supernatural, yes, of sensitivity.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I gave back the door to Miss Sand. Okay. Do I have any? Oh wow! Oh yeah, my sensitivity is actually good. It's 8.
Very good. You will keep the creature inside the ritual room. You might as well mark Janus Mask because I'm going to give you a condition anyway. So
yeah. Okay.
And when we come back, you can describe how you keep the creature, this horror, inside the ritual room. Ms. Sand, the sculptor. The sculptor says, I do not know the one of which you speak. I do not know this Mr. Goodfellow, though I suppose it is the one that Ms. Gagnon is suddenly taken with. Do I have it right?
Yes, I mean that one and same.
He says, there is only one circumstance that would cause me to want to turn my artistic intentions toward him. He must be able to leap. He must be able to jump higher than anyone else in the company. But this is a clue as well. A superhuman leap. Or, put another way, he's interested in only the most talented, powerful dancers. Back at the Theater Grand Guignol, Sasha, please describe Act 3, in which Daniel engages in a desperate action to get what he wants. The final moment, just before the curtain falls, should be very bloody.
I think we see kind of a sumptuous dinner at the mayor's estate. He's sitting with his wife and daughter Dahlia, awaiting the main course, when Daniel comes in rolling a tray with 3 trays on them, revealing 3 simple but sumptuous meat pies. And he puts them before each patron, and they dig in. They're like, "Oh, this is so amazing. What's in it?" And I say, everyone, all the people who had been chasing Daniel in the previous one, he baked them into the pie. And I think as the mayor and his wife look horrified, you kind of see in the background hefting an axe, curtain falling as he brings it off.
Very nice. Burnright, please describe how you keep this monstrosity trapped in the ritual room.
I like shove this chair up against the door, and like the creature's still banging and banging, and like this seems like the door is going to give. And I imagine Goodfellow is up above and like getting his picture taken once again. And like at the moment that the photo is snapped, I cut my hand and place it onto the door, and the door fades away into a solid wall, as though it was tossed aside.
Very interesting indeed. Mr. Goodfellow, do you want to give us that scene as you are being photographed by this impromptu photo session?
Yeah, I think we're in the parlor, or maybe the conservatory. Yeah, like the red walls there. And as Patricia gets the photo ready and attempts to draw the sigil on the floor, Robin just disrobes, completely nude. And he steps in the center and takes a deep breath and looks deep into the camera as it's snapped.
I love it. We hear the sizzle and the pop of the flash powder. And that's good. Ms. Sand, the sculptor leaves you, walks back to wherever he came from, his boots crunching in the snow. You feel the warmth of the chestnut stand again, the warm glow of the gaslight above you. Snowflakes drifting down. What do you do at the end?
I think I brush the snow off of me, but as I brush and brush, I am still chilled. And so almost in a daze, I cut my own right hand and open a nearby door, hoping to find myself back in Hargrave House. By which I mean, if I should roll for that, but
No, I think it's okay. I like just you. Maybe we just don't know exactly where you step into, or step out of yet. But you probably sense the disturbance
yes,
in your ritual room for sure, which maybe something has to be dealt with at some point. But that concludes the night phase. Let us go back to the phase tracker, back to the dawn. No threat was resolved, so no rewards. going to the dawn questions. The first two are not applicable, but you might have gotten an echo in the night. Burn right. Did you get an echo in the night?
I think I pretty much did with getting rid of the door.
Ah, very, very good. I like that a lot. Did you subtly express sexual desire for Mr. Goodfellow in the way you dressed or served them?
I don't think it was subtle, but like, yes.
Yeah, I picked up on it. I don't know how subtle it was either, but I think it's okay. Did you have a scene showing your secret private life in London?
I was hoping to get that by going to the opium den, but no.
I don't think it quite worked out. Did you continue to perfect your worship of Mr. Goodfellow? That's for Mr. Goodfellow to decide.
I think Burnright was a very fine worshiper this session.
Very good. So by answering yes on the question, Goodfellow, you mark XP, and then give Burnright a little reward from your personal quarters.
Yeah, I think earlier in the day when we get back, I toss him a pair of Cleopatra's undergarments as a reward for aiding me with my prank.
Very good, very good. And that will take us right around to Mr. Goodfellow, the rest of your questions. Did you experience an echo in the night?
I think with the camera exuding the cinnamon, comparing with like the bakery smell.
Oh
at the
yeah,
theater.
that's very good. Yeah. Did you let someone? Well timed too, because I was going to say the warm spices, but you beat me to it, so that was good. Did you let someone touch you and then make them pay a price for doing so?
I think Burnright earlier making them my worshiper.
Yeah, I think so. There's also some kind of subtle suggestion with the young dancer too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get that one. Did you express a clear preference for the beautiful over the mundane?
Oh yeah.
Very good. And you have got your marks there. Ms. Sand, did you experience an echo in the night?
I think so. Brushing the snow from me the same way the Daniel brushed the flower.
Yeah, I caught that. It was good. Did you perform a ritual tonight?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it was not quite ritual level, I don't think. Did you have a face-to-face encounter with a dark entity? Yes, you
Yes.
did. Very good. And let's continue on. You can mark new dawn questions if you wish, or leave either or both the same. The worshiper question stays as always. Do we have any unresolved, or do we have any custom moves we have to do here? Oh,
Memories the
Memories of
servant.
Servant, yeah.
Done. I think, if you allow me, I think Burnright stole the Nutcracker from the Snow Queen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can take it. Yeah, it's fine. And then do you have to give it away, or what happens there?
If I keep it, I just add it to my personal
got it.
quarters. If I give it away, I gain an XP.
What are you doing?
I'm keeping it.
Very good. And Janus Mask. I know Burnright marked one. Is that one that you have to narrate?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Burnright was never quite like a rich man by any means, but like he lived a comfortable life by himself in his apartment. And we just see him having like just a few rooms to himself, a nice little bed, a nice little living area. Everything just seems to be made out of wood, and it's very well kept. Very different from the scene in which we saw from the Mask of Perfection. And I imagine like he's drinking some tea as he looks out the window, and it's just, he's just happy and satisfied currently.
Very good. Was there any other Janus Mask? I think that's it. And so that concludes our session. Stars and wishes. whoever wants to go first, take it away.
More vulnerable. I'm starting out with a wish of more vulnerable moves. Everybody's like at 3 conditions. We just like, to be fair, I have a bad habit of just going in and clearing a condition and then immediately gaining another one.
Mr. Goodfellow intentionally kept all of his, so could have wiped them all out in one go.
I think I'm gonna run out of reflections a lot faster than I'm gonna run out of Janus mask prompts.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Well, you do have the one advance that lets you clear them, but yeah, that's that is a thing as well. I'll start with a star. I love Beacon of the Night. Beacon of the Night is one of my favorite moves in the game, and so it was really fun to get to see that. I was also really happy to introduce the Coven, which is my favorite threat in the game, and so that was fun. And yeah, I had a good time with that. I liked the prank that was played on Julius. It just felt so like just poking the bear, which I think was really great. And so that was really fun to see. And yeah, just the ballet studio scene was really, really good. It was such an interesting extended scene that involved all the characters and really, really got you all like kind of deep into that particular threat. The counterbalance to that, of course, is that the Waitley camera felt ignored, and so the Waitley camera in the night phase, it asserted itself quite strongly. That was mostly motivated by the fact that Mr. Goodfellow was marked by the Waitley camera, but nevertheless, it was a thing just to impress upon you all that the threats of London are always out there. And yeah, it was a good session. I had a good time.
Yeah, I really liked the prank with Goodfellow as well. I just love how it implied that Burnright is not a very good person whatsoever. Just like we're not getting to the masks yet of like, what does servitude mean for Burnright? Because it seems to like, I'm trying to imply like that the servitude is less about he's doing this out of desperation, as like his situation got really bad, but in order to achieve his own personal goals.
I think it's an interesting dichotomy because Robin believes in freedom at all costs. So having this person who's like very willingly offering them their, independence is like he's trying to navigate it.
So I really like seeing the relationship between Robin and Burnright develop, and kind of like, for as many times as Robin has scarred his reflection, I think it's funny because Burnright is definitely the more sinister of the two. I really liked how ballsy some of the moves Burnright made this session were. What between essentially threatening to murder the Snow Queen and also spurning the Man in the Sun mask.
I couldn't get out the door, okay? That one is not on me.
You could have left Robin to deal with his own animated flesh sculpture in his
The
image.
one that I probably helped build? Come on now.
I'll also star Helena sicking a serial killer on me.
But interesting, what I thought was interesting about that was what I think is so interesting is that like everybody else is like super into Mr. Goodfellow. In fact, I think that's kind of a wish of mine to see if Most Beloved comes in play soon, either because Burnright makes Mr. Goodfellow Most Beloved by choosing to yield the door, or Mr. Goodfellow chooses it for himself. But the sculptor himself is not, right? The sculptor has kind of said like, you may not be good enough for what he wants, right? He's looking for a different kind of physical perfection, which I thought was intriguing. But a star as well for Max's veil. Now that the coven is in
Yeah.
play. I enjoyed that a lot.
Mhm.
It's really fun. So.
And then I also like, again, more vulnerable moves. And the other thing that we did is we made Burnright a liar because we're not going to resolve Limehouse Lurker in the next 24 hours from the previous day phase.
Yeah, Burn White broke pretty much all of his promises, like over the session. Like I was very close to murdering the Snow Queen just to have like a little bit of parts because like no one's gonna miss her. She's like a crazy lady.
You're all going to have 4 active threats next week because the coven gets introduced. It doesn't matter that there's already 3. The coven is on the board now, so that's going to be so much for you all to deal with. So yeah,
I am hoping now that we've answered the threshold question that we can just tidily wrap up Limehouse Lurker.
oh no, the lurker's totally ready. Like it's ready to be
Yeah,
resolved.
like
You have to do it.
like
Yeah.
I was like I originally was sort of implying like we go to Opium Den and then we may encounter the Limehouse Lurker there because like he's been shown up to like murder there. So like I was like thinking since we ignored it kind of during the day phase, that it would show up, but I forgot about the Waitley camera. So it makes perfect sense as to why that showed up tonight.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is you all have like some very, very pushy conditions, right? You have conditions that are like in the way they're interesting and they're fun, but they're in the way and they demand attention. And I mean, it is yeah, the 3 of you have really, really gotten yourselves into a lot of good fun trouble. So yeah, it's gonna be hard. Then the coven is gonna start striking, and so yeah, it's all gonna be a lot. Yeah, you need vulnerable move scenes really bad next week. So
yeah, like oh man,
or Mr. Goodfellow needs to start murdering people. So there's that as well.
That can be arranged.
Like oh man, like if we had an explorer in this group, like the Limehouse Lurker and like this entire situation could be easily
totally
resolved.
done. This is where the explorer is really powerful, right? Because the explorer like gets to basically defend Hargrave House, increase your night phases, like just make that part of the game like much, you basically get to bring their resources to bear to push back against a lot of this stuff. So
Mhm. I'm also looking forward to like sharing the YouTube videos when they get up.
yes,
Jason.
those will happen at some point. I promise. Any other stars and wishes before we go? Okay, well, that was great fun. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.